You felt it last week. Maybe you didn't name it, but you felt it. You were sitting across from someone you've known for years, someone you used to talk to for hours about everything and nothing, and somewhere in the middle of the conversation you realized you were bored. Not annoyed, not angry, just completely uninterested in what they were saying. And then came the guilt, that little voice asking, what kind of person gets bored by their own friends? But underneath the guilt, if you're honest with yourself, there was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. Here's what nobody tells you about growth. It doesn't feel noble. It doesn't feel like climbing a mountain with inspirational music playing in the background. It feels like slowly becoming a stranger in rooms that used to feel like home. It feels like laughing at jokes that aren't funny anymore and nodding along to conversations that stopped mattering to you months ago. And the darkest part, the part you're not supposed to admit, is that somewhere deep down you enjoy it. Not in a cruel way, but in the way your lungs enjoy oxygen. Because outgrowing people isn't a tragedy. It's evidence that you're still alive. I'm going to tell you something today that will make some of you uncomfortable and make others feel seen for the first time in years. The discomfort you feel around old friends isn't a flaw in your character. It's not something to fix or apologize for. It's information. And the people who taught you to feel guilty about it, who told you that loyalty means staying the same forever, they were not protecting your relationships. They were protecting their own comfort. They were making sure you stayed small enough to keep them company. Let's talk about what's actually happening when you outgrow someone, because most people misunderstand this completely. They think outgrowing is about becoming arrogant or thinking you're better than people. That's the story comfortable people tell to make ambitious people feel small. The truth is much simpler and much harder to argue with. You outgrow people when your operating system updates and theirs doesn't. You're not better than them in some cosmic sense. You just started asking different questions, and once you start asking different questions, you can't go back to the old conversations without feeling like you're wearing shoes that no longer fit. Think about the last time you tried to explain something important to an old friend, something you'd been thinking about or working toward, and you watched their eyes glaze over. You saw the exact moment they stopped tracking with you and started waiting for their turn to talk about something familiar. That glazed look isn't confusion, it's resistance. It's their nervous system recognizing that if they actually engage with what you were saying, they might have to change something about themselves. And change is expensive. Most people would rather lose a friend than pay that cost. Here's the first law of human proximity that nobody teaches you. People don't connect with each other. They connect with versions of each other that serve their current needs. Your old friends didn't love you. They loved the version of you that made their life easier, that validated their choices, that showed up at the same bars and complained about the same things. The moment you stopped being that version, you stopped being useful to them. And this isn't cynical. This is just how a human connection actually works when you strip away the greeting card nonsense. Relationships are alliances, and alliances are built on mutual benefit. When the benefit disappears, the relationship becomes a ritual without meaning. Now, some of you are already defensive. You're thinking about your best friend from childhood, or your ride or die from high school, and you want to argue that those relationships are different. Maybe they are, but let me ask you something. When was the last time that person challenged you? When was the last time they pushed you toward something uncomfortable or told you a truth you didn't want to hear? If you can't remember, then what you have isn't a deep friendship. What you have is a comfortable habit. And habits feel like loyalty until you realize they're just inertia with a nicer name. Let me show you how this actually plays out, because theory is useless without pattern recognition. Watch what happens the next time you try to level up in front of old friends. You start eating better, and suddenly there are jokes about how you're no fun anymore. You start reading more, and there are comments about how you think you're so smart. You start making more money, and the invitations dry up, because now your success makes their stagnation visible. This isn't coincidence. This is social homeostasis in action. Groups have immune systems just like bodies do, and they attack anything that threatens the equilibrium. When you grow, you become a foreign object, and the group will either absorb you back into sameness or reject you entirely. The crabs in a bucket metaphor exists because it's observably true. Put crabs in a bucket, and any crab that tries to climb out will be pulled back down by the others. Not out of malice, but out of instinct. Your old friends aren't evil. They're just crabs. They grab at you because your climbing makes their staying feel like a choice, and choices require justification. It's much easier to pull you back down than to admit they could have climbed too. Here's where it gets psychologically interesting, and I need you to pay attention here, because this is the part most people never figure out. The guilt you feel about outgrowing people isn't natural. It's installed. It was put there deliberately by a society that benefits from keeping you connected to people who slow you down. Think about who profits from your stagnation. Parents who want you to stay close to home. Friends who want drinking buddies instead of accountability partners. Employers who want workers too comfortable to demand more. The guilt isn't yours. It's a control mechanism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every system that touches your life has a vested interest in keeping you predictable. Predictable people are easy to manage, easy to sell to, easy to keep in line. And the most effective way to keep someone predictable is to tie them to people and places that reward sameness. When you feel guilty about outgrowing your hometown friends, you're not experiencing loyalty. You're experiencing programming. The program says, "Stay where we can see you." The program says, "Don't make us feel bad about our choices by making better ones." The program says, "Belong to us forever or be branded as disloyal." But here's what the program doesn't tell you. There's no prize for loyalty to people who are going nowhere. There's no award ceremony at the end of your life where they hand you a trophy for staying friends with people who held you back. The only thing waiting for you at the end of misplaced loyalty is regret so deep it has its own gravity. You'll be sitting in the same bar, having the same conversations, wondering what happened to all those dreams you used to have. And you look across the table at those same faces and realize they're wondering the same thing, except they stopped wondering years ago. Let me give you a framework for understanding this that will change how you see every relationship in your life. People operate on what I call growth frequencies. Some people vibrate at a frequency of expansion. They're always learning, always pushing, always uncomfortable in the best way. Other people vibrate at a frequency of maintenance. They found a comfortable spot, and they're going to defend it until they die. Neither frequency is morally superior, but they are fundamentally incompatible over the long term. When you spend time with someone on a different frequency, one of you has to adjust. Either they rise or you fall. There is no permanent middle ground. This is why conversations with old friends start to feel exhausting. It's not that you don't like them. It's that your nervous system is constantly working to translate between frequencies. You're speaking growth, and they're responding in maintenance. You're talking about possibilities, and they're talking about problems. You're asking, what if, and they're saying, what's the point? The exhaustion isn't social, it's existential. You're literally processing two different realities in real time, and that takes energy you could be spending on actually building your life. Now I need to tell you something that might sound harsh, but it's the most important thing I'll say in this entire video. You are not obligated to light yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Read that again if you need to. You are not obligated to slow your growth so the people around you don't feel bad about their speed. You are not required to shrink yourself so you fit in rooms you've outgrown. The people who taught you that self-sacrifice is noble were usually the ones benefiting from your sacrifice. True friends don't ask you to be less so they can feel like more. Let's talk about the actual secret enjoyment, because I know that's why you clicked on this video. You want someone to tell you it's okay to feel what you're feeling. So here it is. The pleasure you get from outgrowing people is not sadistic. It's not about looking down on them or feeling superior. It's about recognition. Every time you notice the gap widening between who you're becoming and who they're staying, you're getting proof that your efforts are working. You're getting evidence that the books you're reading, the habits you're building, the choices you're making, all of it is actually changing something. That quiet enjoyment is just your psychology rewarding you for growth. It's the same pleasure you'd feel watching your bank account go up or your body get stronger. It's not about them. It's about you. Here's where most people make a critical error. They notice they're enjoying the growth. They feel the guilt kick in, and then they sabotage themselves to make the guilt stop. They go back to the old friends, the old habits, the old conversations, just to prove they haven't changed too much. They dim their light to make others comfortable in the dark. And the tragedy is that it works. The guilt goes away, but so does the growth. And a year later, they're right back where they started, wondering why nothing ever changes, not realizing they chose stagnation over discomfort. I want to give you permission right now to feel the enjoyment without the guilt. Not because I'm telling you it's okay, but because the enjoyment itself is diagnostic. It's telling you something important about your trajectory. When you enjoy outgrowing people, your unconscious mind is communicating that you're on the right path. When you feel sick at the thought of outgrowing people, that's also communication. It's telling you that you've been so thoroughly programmed to stay small that even evidence of your expansion triggers shame. The enjoyment is health. The guilt is the disease. Learn to tell the difference. Now let's go deeper, because there's a layer to this that most people never reach. The reason outgrowing friends feels so specifically pleasurable is that it touches on one of the deepest human drives, the drive to become who you actually are. Psychologists call it individuation. Philosophers call it self-actualization. I call it remembering. Because you're not becoming someone new when you grow. You're remembering who you were before everyone around you told you to be smaller, safer, and more acceptable. Every time you outgrow someone who wanted you to stay the same, you're reclaiming a piece of yourself that was stolen. The pleasure isn't about them. It's about you coming home to yourself. Think about the person you were before your environment started sculpting you. Before your parents' fears became your limitations. Before your teacher's low expectations became your ceiling. Before your friends' insecurities became the boundaries of your permission. That person is still in there, and every act of growth is an act of liberation. The friends you're outgrowing aren't people you're abandoning. They're comfortable prisons you're escaping. And no one ever felt guilty about escaping prison, even if they made friends with the other inmates. Here's a pattern I've watched play out hundreds of times, and once I describe it, you'll recognize it in your own life. There's a moment that comes in every transformation where the old world makes a final attempt to pull you back. Usually it looks like a crisis. An old friend calls with drama that urgently needs your attention. A family member suddenly needs you to prove your loyalty. An ex reaches out at the exact moment you were about to move on. This isn't coincidence. This is a universe testing your commitment. Or if you prefer less mystical language, this is your old identity making one last play to keep you trapped. The people attached to your old self can feel you leaving, and they'll create situations that require you to show up as the person you used to be. The test is whether you take the bait. Most people do. They feel the pull, they feel the guilt, and they rush back to handle whatever emergency has been manufactured. And in doing so, they prove to themselves and everyone else that they haven't really changed. The old identity wins. The transformation fails. Not because it was impossible, but because they let the past vote on their future. The people who actually transform are the ones who recognize the test for what it is and refuse to engage. They let the drama unfold without them. They let people be disappointed. They let the old world collapse while they build the new one. I need to address something directly here, because some of you are thinking it, and I'd rather say it out loud. No, this does not make you a sociopath. Recognizing that you enjoy outgrowing people, choosing growth over guilt, refusing to sacrifice yourself for other people's comfort. None of this is pathological. What's pathological is the opposite. What's pathological is making yourself small for decades, suppressing your potential so others don't feel bad, and then dying with a full graveyard of unlived lives inside you. That's the real sickness. The healthy response to recognizing you've outgrown something is to leave it behind. The sick response is to stay out of obligation and call it love. Let me give you a distinction that will clarify this forever. There's a difference between abandoning people and outgrowing them. Abandonment is about running away from responsibility. You made promises, you created dependencies, and then you disappear. That's weak and it's wrong. Outgrowing is about running toward possibility. You didn't promise to stay the same. You didn't sign a contract agreeing to limit yourself. You're not leaving to avoid something. You're leaving to become something. The guilt trips people throw at you are designed to confuse these two categories. Don't let them. Here's something that took me years to understand, and I'm going to compress it for you so you don't have to learn it the hard way. The friends you'll have in your 20s are not the friends you'll have in your 30s, and that's not a tragedy. It's evolution. The people who served you in one chapter become strangers in the next. This isn't because either of you is bad. It's because you're both changing, and the rate of change matters. Two people growing at different speeds cannot maintain the same proximity. Physics doesn't allow it. What feels like losing friends is actually just the natural sorting that happens when you take your growth seriously. The sooner you accept this, the less suffering it will cause you. Trying to maintain friendships across growth differentials is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you grip, the more you lose. The answer isn't to grip harder. The answer is to let go of the container and find new ways to relate to water. In practical terms, this means accepting that some people will only be in your life for a season. It means letting relationships have endings without treating endings as failures. It means understanding that the friend who was perfect for who you were at 20 might be completely wrong for who you're becoming at 25. Now I want to give you something practical, because understanding is only valuable if it changes behavior. Here's how you actually navigate outgrowing people without becoming a cold machine. First, you stop pretending. Stop pretending you're interested when you're not. Stop pretending you're having fun when you're bored. Stop pretending the friendship still works when you both know it doesn't. Pretending is expensive. It costs you energy, it costs you authenticity, and it teaches your nervous system that your real feelings don't matter. The fastest way to become bitter is to spend years pretending to enjoy things you don't. Second, you let distance happen naturally. You don't need to send a Dear John letter to every friend you're outgrowing. You just stop forcing proximity. You stop being the one who initiates every hangout. You stop rearranging your schedule to make time that neither of you actually wants. Real friendships survive distance. Fake friendships require constant maintenance to simulate life. If you step back and the friendship dies, it was already dead. You're just finally burying it. Third, you accept that they won't understand. When you grow faster than someone, they will almost never see your growth as growth. They'll see it as abandonment, as arrogance, as betrayal. This is not their fault. They're looking at you through the lens of who you used to be, and from that perspective, your transformation does look like a rejection. Don't waste energy trying to explain yourself to people who have no framework for what you're doing. Explanation requires shared context, and you've already left the context they're living in. Fourth, and this is crucial, you grieve properly. Outgrowing people is still a loss. Even if it's a necessary loss, even if it's a healthy loss, it's still a loss. Let yourself feel it. The mistake people make is trying to intellectualize away the sadness. They tell themselves they're better off. They list all the reasons the friendship wasn't working, and they never actually let the grief move through them. Unprocessed grief becomes bitterness. It turns you into someone who doesn't believe in friendship at all, and that's a prison of a different kind. Let me tell you what's waiting for you on the other side of all this, because I don't want you to think growth is just about loss. What you're walking toward is so much better than what you're leaving behind. On the other side of outgrowing mismatched friends is the possibility of finding matched ones. People who speak your frequency. People who challenge you instead of comfortable you. People who see where you're going and want to go there too. These people exist, but you'll never find them while you're using all your social energy to maintain connections that don't feed you. The friendships you're capable of having on the other side of this transformation are almost unrecognizable compared to what you're used to. They're based on mutual growth instead of mutual stagnation. They're based on honesty instead of performance. They're based on who you're becoming instead of who you used to be. These friendships don't require you to shrink. They require you to expand. And every time you expand, the friendship gets better, not worse. That's what real connection looks like. That's what you're making room for when you let the old friendships go. Here's the final truth I want to leave you with, and I want you to let this one sink all the way in. You have a very limited amount of time on this planet. Maybe 80 years if you're lucky, maybe 60 if you're not. In that time, you get to become one person. You get one shot at figuring out who that person is and actually becoming them. Every hour you spend in friendships that don't fit is an hour stolen from the person you could be. Every conversation that drains you is energy that could have gone toward building something that matters. Every relationship you maintain out of guilt is a relationship you're having instead of the one that could actually change your life. You don't owe anyone your stagnation. You don't owe